Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Giving Gap TV, where we are making our way through our hashtag audacious campaign, talking to bold and courageous and pioneering women in the nonprofit sector. And today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Altreisha Foster, who is the president of Cake Therapy Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Foster.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Tina.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive right in, and I want you first to share a bit about your organization's mission and what sort of led you on this journey in the first place.
Yeah. My organization mission is really to empower women and girls through the kitchen, through baking. We aim to teach young women who are systems impacted that that cake and the kitchen could in fact help them to center themselves, but not just only to use it as a tool to center yourself. We have entrepreneurial aspects to it. Their career fields that, that can be bold and audacious, as you mentioned, in the kitchen, or, can emerge from the kitchen. So we're teaching them to use that as a space to center.
Love that. And I love this idea of sort of using the kitchen as like this place of community, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a wonderful aspect. And that's something that Black women really essentially are known for, right? And I think away from that. So can you talk about maybe some of the defining moments in your career where maybe the light bulb went off to come up with this idea, or what that trajectory looked like?
Man, yeah, that's a good question. So, I got a PhD at a very young age, and immediately out of graduate school, I went into the workforce because I did come from a background of poverty. I was also always driven to be successful, so I was a driver of my own career and my own life because I've always said to myself, I will never go back to that space. But then, so I was on the road after getting my degree. I became a principal investigator in the vaccine world. But then I became a mom. Well, the journey of becoming a mom was so difficult that I could not do that job anymore. I was bedridden, and I found the kitchen. And I tell this story all the time that the kitchen actually saved my life. So that started my journey of just doing a cookie class, and then realizing the emotional support that I got from just simply being in the kitchen. And because it saved me in a moment when I didn't need it, and actually discovering that the kitchen has so much power, I thought, wow, this is really an interesting concept, and it's a thing, and it's a tool that we've gone away from for generations. Like our grandparents are used to being in the kitchen. What is it that helped them sustain for so long and enjoyed that process that we've missed, right, as professionals? But we can now come back to actually save ourselves. So it really did pull me from the jaws of postpartum depression, to be completely honest. And I thought in that moment, because I worked in vaccine and health equity field for so long, I thought, is this a inexpensive tool? Isn't this an inexpensive tool that we can encourage women and girls to tap into to help them to really center themselves? So our foundation was simply born out of the idea that baking can be a form of healing, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. It's not just about making cakes. It's about the resilience that you develop, the creativity, and I think cake also creates economic opportunities for women.
So powerful. You mentioned so many things, postpartum depression, which I know is a hot topic, and this place of healing also. I also love the fact that you obviously are brilliant, you're a doctor, but you still found yourself coming back to somewhere really familiar, right? to
Yeah.
sort of do your self-work at the end of the day. And I love that, because I think that's a great example for young ladies seeing you do on this journey. So let's talk about, as a Black woman, right, in
Yeah.
this nonprofit sector, we know we need funding and we need all the things to get this thing off the ground and to keep it going. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the barriers or challenges you faced just along the way of actually keeping it going?
Man, like, show me a Black woman and you'll see barriers and challenges, right? Show me a Black woman in the field of advocacy and nonprofit, and you see a gazillion more challenges, right? And I think for me, it's just access to funding and people believing in this thing that I've discovered, and as a scientist, it's like you have to constantly you're yearning or you're seeking new knowledge. Once you found it, now you have to get buy-in. So getting this funding and getting buy-in for this concept of the kitchen has been like one of the major challenges. But I say overall for me, it's just access to funding, believing. So what I've had to do is be really strategic in how I approach. I don't have a lot of money, so I have to leverage the partnerships that I have here in Minnesota. I have to tell stories. I've been telling the story of how cake therapy came to be. I wrote a book about it. And so I do storytelling. I collect my data, and I try to convince as many people that this work is worth investing in. So continue to build, a strong network of allies, mentors, and funders has truly been a challenge, but it's not as challenging as getting funding to support our mission and our vision, girl. It's a struggle. And then the data tells us that we don't get as much funding as our counterparts, right? As Black women.
1000%.
Yeah. So
yes, that's huge. And I mean, the nonprofit sector is what it is, right, in terms of funding piece, but exactly, which is why Giving Gap exists, right? Because of that gap in the funding that we see, Black women receiving just a fraction of the dollars, right, that are given in philanthropy every year. So obviously you've had to be very innovative with your approach. So let's talk about impact. And you tell us some of the impact you've had in your community and beyond.
I would say when I think of impact of cake therapy, I would say it's personal and it's systemic. We've seen women like myself or otherwise be actually transformed from this experience. They're gaining their financial independence. I've launched a business and I'm encouraging women to launch their businesses. And I think healing comes from actual creative expression. And I would say on a much broader level here, we're shifting the narratives around how justice impacted women can be served. The data tells us that we aggregate data for boys and girls, and the boys have, I would say there are more men impacted by the justice system than women. So we aggregate that data and we feel that whatever programs we put out there, based on what would work for a boy does not necessarily work for women and girls. So we are, what we're doing is that we're telling girls that we're here and we're listening, and as small as your numbers are reflected in the data, let's disaggregate your data and help to change your circumstance, not to focus too much on the past, but what keeps them motivated in knowing that they have the support and they can create on their own terms. And I think we ultimately want to be able to create somewhat of a ripple effect, in their family and in the community. And we've seen that happening, through our connections in the community through cake therapy.
Amazing. So obviously there's a lot of intentionality behind the work that you're doing. So about how this actually works, Dr. Foster. Can you tell us about how you actually create these spaces of engagement? Is it an ongoing program? Are there camps? How do people actually engage with cake therapy?
Yeah. That's a good question. So, man, we have a ton of things going at the same time. So, we have a programmatic arm, which is 18 months. A girl has to commit to 12 to 18 months in that. We have partnerships with other nonprofits within the community where they have access to girls. So we take cake therapy to them. But cake therapy does have an impact in the schools, in the middle and the high schools, where we go in once a week to interact with students of interest to talk about careers in the field of baking. They can be food engineers, right? We can
Yeah.
be food content creators. And it's not just about baking cookies and cakes. There are careers in there, and there are other things. And so we are on social media. We've had a podcast, like I mentioned. We use our podcast to really have other bakers who found this art form come into the space to say, I'm an engineer, but I also bake.
Wow.
Here's what baking does for me. So we use our podcast to drive that engagement and connection with the younger folks. We also we're very active, I would say, active on social media, but we do have connections with community partners. And I think that is the driver for us, is connecting with other partners who are doing work in the community with girls. So we pretty much create a safe space for them, that we do baking workshops, mentorship programs, entrepreneurial trainings, and collaborations, like I mentioned.
Love it. Love it. So you've done something so creative and so uniquely your own. I'm wondering what type of advice you would give to sort of the next generation of Black women leaders in any industry, really, but specifically the nonprofit sector.
I would say for girls, it's to trust your voice and your vision. You know, we can be so easily silenced, and it doesn't matter how many letters you have behind your name, that this one terrible experience can really silence you in a heartbeat. And I want women to understand that they do still have a voice, and they should, trust their vision. You really don't need to wait on permissions to step into leadership. Build a network of your own supporters, own your voice, be bold, create pathways for those who will come after you, and just stand in your truth. Be bold, use your voice.
Love that. Love that. So let's reflect back a little bit into your younger years, a young Dr. Foster. What would you have told yourself as a girl or even a teenager?
Yeah. I would have told myself as a teenager that it was gonna be okay. That whatever happened to you would break you for that moment, but you would find a way through it. I would tell myself as a teenager that you don't need to fear the world. You can create your own space in the world, and you will have done so. And then just continue to be brave and to bold, to be confident in everything that you do.
That's powerful. And I felt that shift when you said you will be okay. Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I would have been okay for a very, very long time, even when I started having children, because I did not remember some of the things that happened to me as a child until I was now pregnant with a little girl. So yeah, I would have told myself then that these things would have broken you, it would have caused you to really go into a shell, because I did create a shell around myself and my memories, but you would have been okay, and you will be okay.
A beautiful, beautiful sentiment. So along this journey, Dr. Foster, can you name for us a few of your sheroes or women that sort of you have looked up to along the way?
Yeah. Number one that comes into focus for me is my mom. My mom gave up everything so that I could be. She she was she was impoverished. I'm Jamaican, so she was born in an impoverished community in St. Catherine, Jamaica, and she herself was struggling to make it out of her own community, and she got pregnant by a nobody, um, who didn't recognize my mere existence, and
Mm.
she gave up her nursing career for me, and she poured into me so that I went to one of the top schools on the island so that I could actually make my way out of poverty. And so she's my number one. She is my number one person. And I speak of Dr. Nita. She is the dean at Howard University. That when I came to the States at a tender age with only $900, no tuition, no place to sleep,
Wow.
she took me in her home and helped to really facilitate me completing my degree at Howard University. So I look up to her, I tap into her, and those are the two women who I can think of, that stand out to me and are my heroes.
Well, that's powerful. Mama's number one, which I love.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dr. Nita because that's incredible.
Oh,
And
yeah.
just speaks to the way in which Black women, just the way we sort of bring each other in, right, into the
Yes. Yeah.
fold and provide safe space when necessary. And I think we're at a time now that we need each other more than ever, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I think about the people who stepped in and filled the gap for me, it's always been Black women. It's
Yes,
like they're mothers of my friends, people who've seen potential in me, and they've really stepped in and supported me.
absolutely. Powerful. So let's talk about all the good things that Cake Therapy has going on. So I want to hear
Yeah.
about some of the upcoming projects, anything that you want to let folks know that you have going on that people can actually engage in and support.
Yeah, so for Cake Therapy right now, we have season 3 of our podcast that's launching tomorrow on Friday. We have an app that makes access to the kitchen much easier. We created it for professionals, people who are doing 9 to 5s, who could tap into our app and say, oh, I have strawberries, what can I make in 5 minutes? So I am leading you to the path of righteousness, per se, to say that you can decompress in the kitchen. So we have that. We have our podcast, we have our app, and we what do I have going on? Yeah, we're stepping into a few projects and collaborations with partnerships. So we are asking for support. Small dollars go a long way. You should see what we've done with what we've received.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody cut the check. Support
Yes.
the podcast, download the app. Tell us
Mhm.
your website and handle on social, Dr. Foster, so folks know.
Yeah, sure. So our website is thecaketherapyfoundation.org, and we are at Cake Therapy Foundation on Instagram. We are the same, Cake Therapy Foundation, on Facebook, and you can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast, and you can get first dibs at our podcast when you download our app. It comes out a day before on our app.
I know that's right. Go ahead and
Yeah.
get that extra early access.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna bring us to a close, Dr. Foster. I so appreciate this. This was fantastic, but we're gonna have one final question for you.
Yeah.
And you're in your own words, what does audacious mean?
What does audacious mean? I would say it means to me leading with boldness, be fearless in whatever you're doing, be unwavering in your commitment, and a commitment to challenging the status quo. To me, it's like, don't wait on permission to innovate or advocate for yourself or for others or for change. And I'd say stepping into to into your light, stepping into your light and reaching for what's yours.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Foster, we want to thank you for your time this morning
Yeah.
and for this wonderful conversation. And we thank you for being an audacious woman.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's been my pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful. My foundation is grateful because we need eyes on us, we need support, and I'm grateful for the platform.
Absolutely.